Almost there. Chapter 23, Tiana. They all went home following the harrowing mosquito attack on Congo Square, but despite her exhaustion, Tiana didn't take a moment to rest. She went straight to her room and dressed for war, putting on a blue cotton top with long sleeves and the denim coveralls she reserved for when she really had to get her hands dirty. She tugged her hair back and tied it with a blue ribbon, then slipped on her leather boots. She took a moment to mentally prepare, then stalked out of her bedroom. When she entered the kitchen, her mother and father were both at the table holding onto mugs. "Where are you going?" Eudora asked. "I'm going to check on Naveen," Tiana lied. "I want to make sure he's okay." She would eventually call on Naveen, but there was someone else she needed to see first. "Can't you wait until tomorrow?" her father asked. "We've all been through quite an ordeal today, Tiana." "Your father's right. You need to rest for a bit." "I'm fine," Tiana assured them. She appealed to her father's sense of duty, knowing that would do the trick. "Besides, after the way Naveen shielded me from that swarm, I owe him." He nodded and cautioned, "Be careful." "I always am," Tiana replied. She grabbed her bag from where it hung on a peg next to the front door and stepped outside. She was hit by a wall of thick, suffocating fog. It had returned with a vengeance. It really was all of the Shadow Man's doing, him making good on his threat. Now she had no doubt about it. Tiana quickly made her way to his emporium in the French Quarter. If ever there had been an occasion to break her rule to only meet in public, this was it. She stopped when she came upon his bright purple door, the same color as the vest Facilier wore. There was a menacing skull and crossbones etched in the lintel above it. Tiana clenched her fists at her sides, soaring up her nerve. "You can do this. You have to." Facilier had warned her of what would happen if she didn't follow his commands, but she hadn't listened. He'd all but promised that his friends on the other side would begin to wreak havoc on the lives of those around her if she didn't start adding that potion to all her dishes. And because of her, people have suffered. It was her fault for not taking his initial threats seriously, her fault for trusting he would stick to his word for getting involved with him in the first place. But despairing over what she should or shouldn't have done would do her no good now. It was time she ended this madness with the Shadow Man once and for all. Tiana pounded on the door. "Open up, Shadow Man." She jiggled the handle. It turned. Unlocked? Suspicion traveled down Tiana's spine like thick molasses. This had all the makings of a trap. Facilier wasn't the type to leave himself exposed. But she'd come too far to back down now. She pushed the door open and took a step inside. Then another. It was dark. Not a single window in the place as far as she could tell. The only light in the room came from the door she still held open. Tiana pushed it open a bit more so that she could see her way inside. When she came upon a table of some sort, she could make out the silhouette of an oil lamp sitting on top of it. She felt around the base of the lamp, searching for the knob. When she found it, she said a small prayer that the lamp had fuel and gave the knob a turn. A small flame flickered to life, giving off just enough light to illuminate the area around her. She picked the lamp up by its wire handle and made her way around the room. A shelf held what must have been hundreds of bottles, some short and squat, others tall and slim. Some filled with liquids, others with seeds and pebbles of various kinds. "I knew you would come to your senses." With a gasp, Tiana spun around. Her heart slammed against her chest at the sound of the familiar voice. Yet, despite the glow of the lamp, the room appeared as empty as it had been when she first arrived. Where are you?" she stammered. Facilier's deep, awful laugh rumbled around the room. A moment later, he emerged from the darkness, striding toward her with that ever-present walking stick. "Smart girl like you knows what's best," he drawled. "I'm not here to make any deals," Tiana said. "I'm here to tell you that you'd better stop whatever it is you're doing." "And what is it you think I'm doing, Tiana? Don't play coy with me. You all but said that you and your friends are behind this fog. I'm guessing you're also behind reason Buford thinks that Duke's Cafe has been closed for a year, and why Miss Marjorie doesn't remember making me a caramel cake for my birthday, and I'm pretty sure you set fire to Ruby Davis's band's instruments last night and sent those mosquitoes to attack us this morning." Facilier paused, holding his grin. I told you things would start happening if you didn't do what I say, he said finally. We had a deal. I'd been adding that potion in my gumbo ever since we opened the supper club. He waved his hand. This isn't about the potion. We can take care of that later. This is about your contract. It's time for you to sign the amendment. Amendment? Tiana put her hands up. I don't know what you're talking about. What I do know is that I have been fulfilling my end of our bargain. You have no right to demand I do anything more than what I agreed to. It seems you have forgotten part of the contract you signed. What are you talking about? Tiana balked. I didn't sign anything. Except that you did. He snatched a lamp from her hand and strode to the rickety wooden desk on the other side of the room. He picked up a tattered scroll and stalked back to where she stood. The proof is right here. Tiana held out the rolled parchment. Tiana took a step back. What is this? It's the deal you signed, he said. She shook her head and started to back away. I didn't sign anything, she said again. Yes, you did. Facilier opened his hand and blew a cloud of iridescent purple dust into her face. Tiana's head shot back as if sustaining a blow. She lifted off the ground, suspended in a slow yet dizzying twirl high above the floor of a cavernous room. She started to spin faster and faster, her head swimming. With a thud, she landed on her hands and knees. The ground underneath her was cold, the dirt and crumbling stone pressed into the fleshy parts of her palms. Tiana lifted her head and found herself surrounded by towering catacombs and rusted wrought iron gates. The cemetery. Dread slushed down her spine. Why am I here? She whispered. That's why, came Facilier's low growl. Tiana's head seemed to turn off its own accord, drawn to a scene playing like the moving picture shows on the big screen at the Prateria Theater. It was her, wearing a sparkling white dress and glittering shoes. Tiana suddenly realized what she was looking at. This was the previous year, when she made that deal with Facilier. She was unable to hear the words being spoken, but she remembered it all so clearly that she could almost recite them in her head. She froze when Facilier pulled a scroll from his jacket and unfurled it. But that part didn't happen. A scream collected in her throat as she watched herself sign the scroll, then shake Facilier's hand. No, Tiana said aloud. That can't be right. But it is, Facilier said. In a flash, she was back in Facilier's dark emporium, her mind muddled by what she had just witnessed. How could she not remember that? You signed this contract, Tiana. One corner of his mouth lifted into an ugly grin. You just saw it with your own eyes. Facilier set down the lamp and picked up a long wand made of smooth purple stone. Threads of gold twirled throughout it. Tiana looked on in dismay as he closed his eyes and spoke in a language she didn't understand. The wand began to glow in his hand. As he glided it down the scroll, tiny writing appeared in gold lettering. He hovered the wand over the bottom portion of the document. Here, Facilier said. This is the section you seem to have forgotten. It says that you must agree to an amendment every year, or this city and the people you love will suffer. We're coming on the year 1 mark, Tiana. If you don't sign again by sundown on Mardi Gras, hell will rain down on this city. No, Tiana gasped, shaking her head. She put a hand to her mouth as her eyes read over the letters scrawled in glittery gold ink. No, this can't be. I didn't sign any contract. I didn't agree to any amendment. I'm not doing any of this. Her head snapped back with another blast of purple dust. She was instantly dropped into the middle of her parents' living room. Both her mother and father writhed on the floor, pain etched across their faces. They soundlessly screamed into the void. Tiana tried to run to them, but her legs wouldn't move. It felt as if she were stuck in quicksand. She reached for them, but they were too far away. Watching them suffer was so excruciating. Tiana's knees gave out, sending her to the floor. She squirmed around like a bug stuck in its back. When she opened her eyes, she was once again in Facilier's dreadful dungeon. He stood above her, his mouth screwed up in a twisted grimace. Is this what you want for Eudora and James? Facilier asked. Where's Mama and Daddy? She screamed. They're just fine. For now, Facilier added. I wanted to show you what could happen if you didn't sign this paper before Mardi Gras. It was one of his mind tricks again, but that didn't mean it couldn't be reality one day. Tiana scrambled up to the floor and snatched the scroll from his hands. She tried to rip it, but it was rough as leather and barely crinkled. That deep laugh rumbled from Facilier's chest. It's binding, he said. Sign it before Mardi Gras, or watch your mama and daddy suffer. There had to be a way out. She hadn't agreed to this. She could not be indebted to the likes of the Shadow Man forever, under his thumb for the rest of her life. You won't get away with this, Tiana said. I already have. He snatched the quill from the pot of ink and shoved it at her. No! Tiana started to turn, but he caught her by the back of her coveralls. Jerking out of his grasp, she ran out of the dark room, then raced out of the alley and back into the fog.